All right, I am driving. Yes, okay, I'm recording. Aha, just need to make sure that. So I'm driving around Atlanta right now, and I am here today to help home buyers get the most out of their home buying experience, right? Help educate them, no matter where they are, hopefully give some helpful tips. So today, I just want to talk about what I'm seeing in the market, right? I was out shopping with a buyer today. We saw 3 different homes. And so I want to kind of talk to the experience of these homes. The first home we saw, first of all, one of the things I want to talk about, it was, I told my client, like, look, it was on a main road, 35-mile-an-hour road, which I'm always a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger on when it comes to a 35-mile-an-hour road. They're harder for resale. That's reality, right? Less people want to live on a road that's 35 miles an hour and has split yellow line. And I said there's a couple reasons that this might work, which we want to do some investigation. It was right near a stop sign. You don't need to investigate, right? So people aren't like, it was one house away from a stop sign, right? So people aren't blowing by this house at 35 miles an hour, right? They're usually approaching it, slowing down, or coming off another stop sign. So that's actually not terrible. And another time I am okay with a 35-mile-an-hour road is if you're right by a school, right? Maybe you're across from elementary school, high school, and it's in it's not a neighborhood that has rental restrictions. That could be a huge plus for purchasing the home, right? When you're like, hey, turn it into a rental, and so that is one of those things of like, all right, I could consider that. On top of that, wasn't actually that far from universities, so you just need to look into, hey, could I turn this into a rental? What are local ordinances on a rental? It was only a 2-bedroom home, so they might be able to rent it out to one college student or something like that, long term as well. So that was a reason why I say, okay, hey, I could get behind a house purchase on a road that's a main road, 35-mile-an-hour road. Now there was a slew of problems in this home. HVAC was out, looked like there was mold. The house smelled of mildew. So we were like, yeah, no, we're not making an offer on this home. But the home as a whole, right, when it comes to not had those other issues, it might have been worth investigating. Second home we go to is townhome. Now, when you're looking at townhomes, they can be condos and they can be townhomes, right? Like, it actually may technically be a condo and not be a fee simple in Georgia, right? You don't own it, and condos are typically, not typically, you always want to check the covenants, bylaws, right? But condos are typically walls in for the homeowner, walls out for the, what I'm hearing right now. I'm hearing something. All right, maybe I think the windows were slightly open. All right, there we go. I was like, what is that noise? I'm freaking out. All right, anyway, so yeah, condos are typically walls out for the HOA, walls in for the homeowner. Now, the second home we saw was actually not a condo. It was as a townhome, and we were looking at some of the exterior, which would have been more than likely HOA maintenance. There was a retaining wall, and the retaining wall was in poor shape, and this thing was probably easily $20,000 plus to repair. It was a big retaining wall. On top of that, that retaining wall looked like it was failing, and if that wasn't failing, there was a lot of those big wooden beams were rotting. There was a tree right at the top of it. So if that retaining wall goes, that tree goes, and it's coming in the direction of your house. So we're like, hey, that's a big, big concern. On top of that, you looked at the siding, a lot of these townhomes, the siding was not in good shape. So even if that was HOA responsibility, it may not have been, given the type of home ownership, then you've got a lot of houses that are having, just kind of falling apart, right? And that's not the kind of community you want to move into. It's not. All right, so we were talking about townhomes and, ultimately what you're responsible for as a homeowner versus what the HOA is responsible for. And when you're shopping, you really want to be aware of that. Are you buying a condo or are you buying a townhome? And if it's a condo association where they're responsible for building maintenance, then your insurance may actually be lower. That's something to talk to your insurance agents about, right? And so you can really, if it's got a slightly higher HOA, but you're paying less in monthly insurance, then it helps balance out that HOA expense. And that's something you really want to be aware of. Now, at the same time, if you're responsible for siding, roofing, etc., when it comes to living in a condo and a townhome, that can be problematic. Because if your neighbor is responsible for their own roof and they're not maintaining it, or not willing to maintain it, you have shared space with them, and their leak might cause problems for your home. So these are all sort of things you want to be aware of when you're purchasing a townhome and or a condo. So the second home, like I said, it was a townhome. It looked like a townhome, right? And it was actually a townhome. The second home, or the third home, what looked like a townhome, but it was technically a condo, which means the association was responsible for walls out, and you're responsible for walls in. Now, walls in also means you're responsible typically for windows and doors, sometimes fences, and if you have a yard, you're also sometimes responsible for any trees that are growing in that yard. So these are all sort of things you want to pay attention to when you're buying a condo and a townhome. So yeah, ultimately, those are some of the things that we saw when we were out shopping today. We saw one of the houses had sunlights, right? Sunlights are amazing, and they are problematic. Like, seriously, skylight, sunlight, skylight, whatever you want to call it. Skylights are incredibly problematic all the time. You see, they have leaks. The seals, they have the sun beating them down all the time. It's a nice feature, but they're problematic. That's all I got to say about that. Anyway, so hopefully all that's helpful. If I can ever help you buy or sell a home anywhere in Atlanta, let me know. If I can help you take care of your home, well, give me a call. Send me an email. Let's jump on the phone, talk about your long-term real estate goals and dreams.